Are you a young mom, or do you know a young mom who is in the trenches right now? If so, you might want to pass this episode along to them because I'm speaking with Mary Kay Tiller. She is a cheerleader and encourager of young moms, and she shares practical advice of how to nurture your soul during this season of life. Hi, friend. You're listening to Find Hope Here. I'm your host, Teresa Whiting, author, speaker, ministry leader, friend, and fellow struggler. This is a podcast about the messy, complicated, painful parts of life, but also the beautiful, joy-filled hope that Jesus promises. Each week, we dig deep into God's Word together and talk about how His truth impacts our everyday lives. I'm not going to ask you to sit with me and have coffee because I seem to have my best conversations while I'm just doing life. So I'd love to hang out with you as you walk or fold laundry or drive to work. You're invited to join me in pursuing the hope God promises. No matter where you are or where you've been, I pray you always find hope here. Let's jump into today's episode. Welcome, friends, to Find Hope Here. Today, I'm introducing you to my friend, Mary Catherine Tiller. Mary Catherine lives in East Texas with her husband, their 2 kids, and 30 head of cattle. She's a speaker, adjunct professor, and co-founder of New Mercies for Moms, a ministry that reminds moms that Jesus is in the midst of motherhood. She also co-hosts Writing Off Social, a podcast for Christian writers looking to grow their audience without social media. In her free time, Mary Kay enjoys reading on her back porch, coffee dates with friends, and movie nights with her family. Okay, so that's the formal bio. And now I want to tell you my bio for Mary Kay, because Mary Kay and I met a year ago. And I just want you guys to know, if you've ever met somebody and you're like, oh, I just want to be around that person more, that's Mary Kay. And I know that when you talk to the moms on today's podcast, and not just moms, by the way, this podcast is for everyone. If you're not a young mom, you know one. So please don't tune out. Mary Kay, welcome, welcome. And tell us a little bit more about yourself and a fun fact.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, I just have to say that everything you described, the feeling is mutual. When we met Teresa, it was like a kinship. I was like, I feel like I've known you forever and I want to know you
Mm-hmm.
forever. And thank you again for inviting me on. I'm so excited. I love your podcast. It's a joy to be here. Okay, so you shared my bio. You know, I live in East Texas. I am actually from the Houston and Austin area, met my husband in college. At the time, he also wanted to live in a city, so I was like, "Great, let's get married." And then 6 months before we got married, he was like, "Just kidding, I wanna move home," which was in the country. I thought I was gonna live in the city my whole life, but I actually really love it out here. It's beautiful. So that's a little bit about me. I have 2 kids, like you said. Lucas is 7 and Julianne is 9, and a fun fact is that I was actually in a secret society in high school, and I managed to keep it a secret even from my best friends until graduation night.
Oh, is this
Yeah,
is it
random.
still a secret?
No. It was just like a random encouragement society that, I don't even know who started it, but they, like, kidnapped me in the middle of the night. I mean, my parents knew, and, like, did the whole induction thing and told me I couldn't tell anyone, and then we, like, secretly encouraged people all year long, and then at graduation, we got to reveal that we were in the Sea Society. Dun-dun-dun.
Oh, that's so
It was fun.
cool. I love that. And I'm not surprised.
It was weird.
Yeah, I
Weird
love
fun
it.
fact.
So, on today's episode, we are talking about soul care for young moms. So, we're in the middle of a soul care series, and I know that when you're in the trenches, I mean, it's hard to care for your own soul. So, I know that that is a passion of yours. Can you tell us a little bit about why, like, where did that passion originate in you?
Yeah, I think it originated just from my own experience. I was not one of those little girls that grew up wanting to be a mom. I knew I would be a mom, but it was not a goal or dream of mine that I just, I didn't even like babysitting very much. I was a camp counselor for 7-year-olds at one point and was like, what is my life? What am I doing? So I knew that I wanted to be a mom, but I didn't put much thought into it, I guess, is what I'm saying. And so when I had kids, I just realized how hard motherhood is. And I think we all know that motherhood is hard before we have kids. We watch it, we see it. But knowing something is hard and experiencing the hard is two totally different things. And so I was ready for the diaper changes and the meltdowns, but what I did not anticipate was how I would react to the sleep deprivation, which, spoiler alert, was not well at all. And or the depression that I would experience every Sunday evening as I would look forward to a week of me being alone with the kids while my husband was at work. Like I didn't know that I would experience that or that I could ever get to a place where I felt overtouched and like didn't want anyone else to touch me because I had been touched all day long. Um, and
Yes.
so just these were things that I didn't realize were a part of motherhood. And you don't know, and you can't know until you're in it because you don't know how you're going to experience it or what your babies are going to be like. And so I just have so much compassion for the young mom who is in the thick of it because I know how hard it is. And I also know how difficult it is to talk about it because you don't want to complain about this incredible gift and privilege that God has given us. And it is both a gift and a privilege, but it is also a tool of refinement. And that is never easy. And so I just have all the compassion. I want to give all the young moms all the hugs. So, yeah.
Yes, yes, I relate to everything you're saying, and I don't know if the listeners know my introduction to motherhood, but when Greg and I were first married, we were diagnosed with unexplained infertility, and
Mm.
we felt like God was calling us into adoption, like that's how we're going to grow our family. And so we adopted a set of twins, 2-year-old twins from Romania, and they were our first, a boy and a girl. And
Mhm.
then a year and a half later, I got pregnant with my daughter Bree, and when Bree was 8 months old, I got pregnant with twins, Caleb and Gabrielle.
Oh, you're
And
kidding. I did
so,
not even realize this myself, that it was so
yeah,
close together.
at one point,
Wow.
we had 2 5-year-olds, a 17-month-old, and 2 newborns. So for the moms that are in the thick of it, I
Yeah.
feel you. Like, I remember saying when people would be like, "Oh, how are you?" My standard answer was, "We're surviving." And I really did
Yes.
feel like survival mode for so long. We had gone from 0 to 5 kids in 3.5 years, and
It's incredible.
my head was wanting to just pop off. And there
Yeah.
were all the things, all the emotions. And like you said, Mary Kay, I felt like everybody was like, "Oh, you're so cute. Look at this wonderful family." And I wanted to be like, "No, somebody's going to get hurt around here. And nobody's listening to me. And this is so hard. And I don't know what to do." So I'm so happy that you're here to talk in reality of like what motherhood is like and give encouragement and give hope and give grace to the moms who are in that position. And maybe you don't have 5 under 5, maybe you have 1, maybe you have
Right.
2. It's an adjustment no matter what. And so as we're talking about soul care, I think one of the easiest things for a mom of littles to do is to neglect her own soul care. Like
Mm. Mhm.
she's asking right now, really? How? What? When? Where? So Mary Kay, tell us. Tell like start with the basics. How do moms of littles care for their souls?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm actually going to start with physical care because Teresa, you and I talked about this before we recorded. It was just this idea that soul care is actually embodies your whole self. It's not just the spiritual aspect, it's caring for yourself physically and emotionally, socially, all of that. So when we talk about the basics, I'm going to share some I'm talking basic ways to care for yourself physically. Some of these are going to sound comical, but they come from a very real place of experience. The first one is you need to go to the bathroom when you need to go.
Yay!
I know that sounds so silly, but I found when my kids were little, especially, I would put it off for hours and hours, and I would be like, "I'll go in a minute, I'll go in a minute," and then I would like, it would just you're walking around uncomfortable. I don't know, maybe this isn't okay to talk about on a podcast,
Oh, it's
but
good. This is
I
good.
just I just remember my mom being like, "That is the most basic way to love yourself, is just to go when you have to go," and I was like, "You're right," and so I started doing that. If I had to go, I would say, "Guys, mama's gonna take a quick break," and I would go do it. So, go to the bathroom when you need to. The other is, put yourself to bed. Sleep is so vitally important, and there is not near enough of it when you have young kids in the home. When my kids were 5 and 2, I actually went to counseling because I thought I was having a nervous breakdown, and by the end of the first appointment, we had just determined that I was sleep deprived.
Mm,
And, the questions that he was asking me were like, "How much sleep are you getting, Mary Kay?" And I'd be like, "That's not the point. I'm a horrid mother." And he was like, "No, it's absolutely the point." So we just spent the next 3 months making lifestyle changes that promoted good sleep, and it made me a new woman. And so I
mm,
just wanna say that, like, Netflix isn't worth it, moms. Like, your goal should be to get 8 hours of sleep at night. Even if you have to put the kids to bed earlier, trust me, they can use the extra sleep too. And so we used to put our little ones to bed at 7 o'clock, and that gave me an extra 2.5 hours to pick up the house and have a cup of tea and watch a Netflix show or 2 and catch up with my husband and still go to bed by 9:30. And I
mhm.
know that makes me sound like an old lady, but I was up by 6 so that I could have some alone time, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But my son would wake up at 6:30, and I still got 8.5 hours of sleep, and that was absolutely pivotal to me being the best mom and human that I could be. So
That
go to the
is
bathroom, get some good sleep, eat good food. But food is fuel, right? We know that. And while it's tempting to just like shovel the mac and cheese into your mouth while you're cooking it, which I still do to this day, like I promise, I'm not coming from a place of having done this well, but good food is important. So make sure you're eating, vegetables and not just always snacking here and there. Like try to actually sit down and have one really good meal um, a day if possible. And do some kind of physical activity that feels good to you, even if you have to do it with the kids. My kids love to dance, and so we would have dance parties a lot, and I would just let myself treat it like 20 minutes of cardio. Like, I'm gonna dance around this house like I am getting some serious exercise in. If you or taking the kids for a walk, pushing a stroller up a hill is serious exercise. So
mhm.
do it, just like prioritize it every day. If you can get away for a class or if you can take a walk by yourself, do that. But if you can't, find a way to exercise with the kids. Um, and then this last one is also kind of a funny one, but buy yourself some new bras and underwear. Like, if your underwear is older than your toddler, then you need new ones. And I am terrible about this. I hate spending money on things that don't seem like nobody sees them. Like, I don't know. But it doesn't have to be fancy. Go to Target, drop 20 bucks. Like, it is 100% worth it. You really do feel better if your underwear are not full of holes and you're not wearing a nursing bra and your toddler stopped nursing 3 years ago. Like, it's just treat yourself.
I love, love, love all of these ideas. I think they're so practical and so good. How about emotional and social? Because as you were saying, we are holistic beings. What are some ways that we can care for our souls, even our emotions, our social lives? As
Mhm.
moms, it's like we get put on the back burner. We're like, oh, I'll get to myself in 30 years.
Right.
And that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
helpful.
It's not. And really, so much of the difficulty of motherhood is that it feels very isolating and it is difficult to do a lot for your emotional and social care. But I would really encourage every mom listening and really just every woman listening, fight to find some community. Like, do not try to do motherhood alone. Um, it is so important to have other women, even just one other woman that you can talk to when you're about to pull your hair out or, just anything. Like you just need a friend. And so when I was a young mom, I was new to rural East Texas, and I was like, how in the world am I ever going to find friends? Like there just aren't people around here. And I genuinely prayed for friends and I asked the Lord, I said, "You've got to bring me somebody. I don't know who or how." And we were attending a church at the time. And he did. He brought me friends and I found them through, mothers of preschooler groups. I found them through the preschool that I dropped my kids off at, got to know some moms there. Obviously, at church, I met some women. And so there are just so many places where people go out in the real world, and you've got to seek them out and find them, and it's scary but you've also got to be the friend. So if you want moms to hang out with and there's a girl that you've met at the library at story time a time or two, like ask her if she wants to do a play date at the park after story time and like make the effort to invite her out and go and get to know her better. And just it's so important to have that support and to have someone who is in the trenches with you. Just as much as you need a mentor, someone who's ahead of you in mothering, you need that person who's right there in the same stage as you. Um, and just along that line, like make dates with friends. And again, make it these dates in person. Go and get a drink with a friend or go get dinner with a friend. Or if it can't be a time without the kids, then make it a play date. Some of my best conversations happened with our kids sprawled out in the floor in front of us. And so that's just so important to be able to talk through life. And another thing is, if at all possible, and I know that finances are not always in a great place, but if at all possible, try to schedule like an annual girls trip, even if it is a night away. If you have a friend who you can stay at their house, if you can rent a little Airbnb on the edge of town, like just get an annual girls trip, something to look forward to, a time where everyone's away from your kids and you can just really connect and have a good time.
I love those ideas. And I'm going to just put in one or two ideas also.
Mhm.
When you were talking about being that friend, one of the things I just want to point out is the other moms that are at story time or at the park, they're lonely too. They're
Completely.
dying for someone to say, "Hey, do you want to get together?" And you just be the person because I'm telling you, those moms will love that. And the other thing I wanted to say when you were talking about having your kids sprawled out in front of you is I
Mhm.
think one of the things that stops us is this idea like, well, I have to have my house picked up and I need
Oh,
to do
yes.
the no, no. I'm going to tell you, Mary Kay, when my kids were all little and I was in survival mode, I had a friend who had a beautiful, beautiful home. And what I loved most when I went to her house is like there was laundry on the couch and there were
Yes.
dishes in the sink. And I just felt like, oh, here's a place I don't have to feel like I gotta be all prim and proper, like, there was no prim or proper with all those
Right.
little kids, and it was just comforting, and I it took the pressure off of me when I had
Mhm.
friends over to feel like, "Oh, I have to wait till my house is perfect." No, nobody's looking
Yeah.
at your house. I had this sign well, I never bought it, but I wanted to. It said, "If you're here to see me, come on in. If you're here to see my house, make an appointment."
I love it. I want that too. That's genius. Yeah, it's so, so true. I love, love, love that you bring that out because that was a constant conversation with my friends when we would do these play dates, about the fact that we knew we were friends because I could have you over and not feel the need to put away the laundry, or just how maybe it feels counterintuitive, but that really is hospitality. When you can say to someone, "Listen, I'm not going to try to pretty up my life for you. Like you're welcome here no matter what." And it makes me feel better when I walk in and there's dishes in somebody's sink and I'm like, "Okay, I'm not the only one who struggles to keep up with that mountain of dishes all the time." So yes, those are fantastic additions. I love it.
Yeah. There are some times when moms, sabotage their own soul care, and I know that this is something that's really on your heart as well. What are
Mhm.
some of the ways that we do that to ourselves?
You shared at the top of this interview that I run a little small business with our friend Sandy, and it is called Writing Off Social, and it's to help writers do their work off of social media. And so this is something that I really think about a lot because for me as a young mom, my greatest threat to my mental health, aside from isolation and not being with people, though I think it's kind of tied into this too, was the time I was spending on social media. And I am not trying to make anyone feel bad for using and being on social media at all. I'm just sharing my experience. I started writing when my kids were both very little. I think Julianne was 2 and Lucas was 2 months. And I don't know why that felt like the best time to start a new venture, but it did. And so I spent a lot of my time glued to my phone, sharing posts that I had written and responding to comments and waiting for feedback and checking every time someone liked it or commented. And I found myself not only being snappy with my kids who were consistently asking for my attention and I was staring at my screen, um, but also just gradually becoming more anxious. And it took me a really long time to put two and two together to realize that the way I was interacting on social media and the things that I were taking in was actually affecting my mental health. I would not have said that it was at the time. But it was really when I decided to get off of social media entirely that I began to realize what an effect it was having on me. And one of those effects is that it was giving me anxiety. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but like I would have been on Facebook scrolling and you see several fun posts like, oh, someone's announcing they're pregnant, which can be its own hardship, honestly, depending on your situation. It's like you're seeing that, and then, oh, someone's cute graduation picture, and that's so fun. And then you see some like horrid story about something happening to a child or something like that. And that post would just wreck me for days. And I'm an empath. I feel what other people feel. And so even if it wasn't a story about a child, if one of my friends was going through a hard time and shared a post about it, like, or even not a friend, just an acquaintance, maybe someone I met in college that now lives halfway across the world from me, I carried those things with me. And it made it very difficult for me to be emotionally available to the people who were right in front of me, my children, my husband, my in real life friends, and my in real life community. And when I stepped away from social media for good, I realized that I was only carrying the things that were happening in my community now. And it was almost like it was I don't know, I was able to take on emotional burdens that were more appropriate to who's in front of me and what's going on around me. And maybe I can actually do something about it. Like maybe if my friend is sick or got hurt or something tragic happened, I can bring them a meal. I can participate in that heartache rather than just carrying it around and not being able to do anything about it. And so I think as moms, we underestimate how the media that we're bringing in, whether it's TV or podcasts or social media itself, we underestimate how much it affects us, and we've got to be more mindful about that, and then be really ruthless in eliminating those things that don't serve us well.
100%. I support this message 100%. A couple weeks ago, I did an episode with my son Caleb because we had done a 40-day flip phone challenge where
Yes.
we didn't just step away from social media, but we stepped away from our iPhones or smartphones. And the white space that created, not just in my brain, but in my soul, in my body of like it just created space. And I think, like you said, to be more present to the life that's in front of me rather than being distracted and missing out on my real life because I'm stuck. I'm checking. I got to check my email. I got to check my phone. I got to check messages and all the things. Everybody knows. I mean, we're all doing it.
We all
know
live
what
with
it
it.
is.
Yes, yes.
So I so appreciate that message. And I think for moms of littles, it's compounded because you're not just seeing everybody else in the world, you're seeing them rock it because that's what they put on.
Oh no, that's so true. I didn't even touch on the whole comparison thing. I think most of my anxiety and like the times that I can remember back of when I would like freak out on my husband and he'd be like, "Where is this coming from? We are doing fine. Like our kids are doing fine." And I'd be like, "Yeah, but they're not reading at 2 years old. And so-and-so's kid is already reading and they're going to be behind." And he would be like, "What in the world?" And if I just hadn't even put myself in that position to compare myself to that situation, it wouldn't have been an issue. So
I'm going to interrupt our conversation right here and continue it next week. I hope you'll be back to hear more practical ideas on how to nurture your soul as a young mom. Thanks for hanging out with me today on Find Hope Here. To find anything we mentioned on the episode, go to teresawhiting.com/listen. That's where you can find all the show notes. In closing, I want to leave you with this prayer from Romans 15:13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit, you may abound in hope.